Good afternoon, and we're back on my 99 Ranger. This is the XLT version. It has the 4-liter V6, but in this particular model there are two versions of that. There's the push rod, which I have, and there's the single overhead cam. And the way you can tell the difference is up here on top of the air box, it will say SOHC. Does it make a difference? Well, a little bit when it comes to the torque specs on certain things, such as the upper intake plenum, which I'm going to have to remove. I'm also going to have to remove the coil pack there in order to get to things on both sides. Now, the more difficult aspect is going to be on this passenger side, because you have to remove a few more items than you do on the driver's side. Plus, you've got to drain all of the coolant, because you're going to have to remove the upper radiator hose. At the same time, I'll replace any gaskets as I go along. And since I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and do the thermostat. It's probably original. Again, this is a 99. It's been good. But I'm going to go ahead and replace that thermostat and the coolant also. I think I replaced the coolant 5 or 6 years ago, so it's due. Now I'm going to do a little scan around with the camera. This way you can refer to it later on if you say, oh, I think I missed something, or where did that go? Where should that not go? I'm going to do a little scan with my camera and the flashlight, and I strongly encourage you to take lots and lots of photos. Plus, when I take certain things apart, I will mark it with good old blue masking tape. This is the painter's tape. So let's start with the scan around. You might notice I've taken the battery out already, and I've partially dismantled some of this. It's not a particularly difficult job, it's just taking multiple items apart in order to get to the valve covers. I believe I also have to take the serpentine belt off and move the air conditioning compressor to one side. You don't have to disconnect the lines, but you do have to move that to one side for clearances. Now, let's get the light and see if we can see some areas that aren't shining well in the dark. Does that make sense? As you can see, both of those valve covers are buried in there pretty deeply. Hopefully you can get a good shot of this. I was waiting until things cooled down a little bit outside and it got a little bit darker. If you look, you can see a lot of leakage. Now, right down there, see the head of my bolt? You can see a lot of that leakage goes onto that exhaust manifold. Well, you get a leak like that, of course it burns, it smells, and you could start a fire. So that's one area. Let me reposition the flashlight and see if we can get another area. It's a little more difficult on this side, so what I will probably do as I begin to dismantle this, I'll have a better view. But you see my finger, and way down there at the bottom of my finger you can see a lot of the leakage right in there. Okay, well, I went ahead and had removed part of the air box here. So, you know, there's a clamp here. I think that was maybe 8mm. Take off one connector, electrical connector here, and took off this one breather hose here. I had taken this little guard piece off, and there was only, you see the piece of tape there, was only the one bolt. The other one stripped down a long time ago. That's to cover for the accelerator cable, and the over here it's going to be your cruise control. And I'm going to show you how to take that apart. So here's your throttle body here. I'm probably going to clean that out too. They get gummed up. All right, I'm going to convert this to my new little clamp to show you how to disconnect this from the throttle body. It's a little tricky. Well, I had to call it quits for a moment. It began raining, so a little bit of a rain delay here. All right, let's look at how these connections go for the accelerator cable and the cruise control cable. Now, I have dismantled it already, but when everything is together, it's going to be like this. And you have to very carefully reach down with a screwdriver. You see this clip? That fits over the little ball right there where my thumb is. So you gently snap that off, and I'll lube that up when I put it back. That controls the accelerator. Now, it's all part of this plastic section also, and I need to take these two things apart so that I can move the cables out of the way on both sides. Now, because that is not just snapped in, but if you look closely, there's a pin right here, and it protrudes through here. So when you're snapping this off, be very, very careful. I removed it first from up here. I'll show you that, so that I have access. You're going to snap it out of its little holder this way and pull back. But I had to take a small screwdriver in here. If I can get my hand out of the way. I had to take a small screwdriver in here, wedge that in there, and then take this and pull it back out. Now, how did I get that so I could move it? Well, there's a bracket up here, right here. And you can see the wings here. So it snaps through, and it's like this, and you'll see the wings. Push those wings or those tabs and push her back through. The other cable, there is a clip that holds this cable in place so that you can adjust it. Since it's the first time I have done this, I went ahead and I took it out. I don't think it was necessary, but there's a clip that fits down in there, and mine goes over about the 4th groove. That's so you can adjust it. Well, it fits into the actual bracket over here. It just pushes up, snaps back in. So I can move this cable out of the way. I can take this cable and move it out of the way. But I have up here, and I'm going to show you, there's a bracket just out of sight here that I had to spray with some WD-40, and I'm going to show you that to get this accelerator cable out of. There we go. Yeah, it's better. There's a hook right here that keeps it in place. So now I'm going to take that and move it out of the way. All right, so what's next? Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and take off the hoses here. Try and keep the light from being too bright. I've got to take off the brake booster hose and this vacuum hose, disconnect the idle air control, disconnect this power connector, and let's see, yeah, and you know, down here you're gonna have to remember the routing of your actual spark plug wires and cables. Excuse me. And what I've done is I took a piece of paper and I've written down the order in which all this should be done. I have written the order of the coil pack and the actual cylinders. I've done this half a dozen times. I still can't get it right. All right. So what we have here, the spark plug wires, make sure that you have everything in its proper perspective as compared to the spark plugs and where it connects with the coil pack. Now on a piece of paper I have written that down so I don't forget. and I'm going to take a picture of this. Remember, these are going to have to run under the intake plenum. So if you're looking at the vehicle from the front, you have cylinder 1, 2, 3, driver's side, 4, 5, 6. Now the coil pack's a little different. I was actually looking up the single overhead cam engine, and the coil pack is a little bit different between this and the push rod that I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5. So it's actually different. I will label everything. Remember the blue tape? That's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to say take a few snapshots so I'll know where everything should be as far as placement. Disconnected the idle air control here. Pull this line, and if I'm not mistaken, that's all part of the vacuum system to control the blend doors. And that's one of my videos where my blend doors didn't seem to work quite right. And way over on this other side is where it was too close, I guess when they manufactured it, it was too close to the hot exhaust manifold and it burned through. But that's all part of that. That's, I guess, where the vacuum comes from. And then here's your brake booster. And I'm going to have to get another clamp. I broke it. Then I'm going to take the power connector off. Oh, and I don't think I have to disconnect any of the connections here on the actual AC pump. I may. I'll see once I get the serpentine belts off and get this unmounted, because as you can see way down here, it's tricky, real tricky. Oh, I need to take the connection for the throttle body off too, right there. 10mm screw, backed it out. There's a tab right here, and I pushed down and pulled very delicately because this is mounted. I may have to take this part out also. It's mounted into a plastic clip. Yeah, that's going to have to come out too in order to gain access. So I'm going to have to pull that down and pop that out. There we go. Now again, I'm going to take some more photos here of perspective as to how this line runs, and this is over here and this is over there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and remove this little vacuum line right here. That's probably PCV valve. That's all. Now I think I need to go concentrate on the coil pack. One step at a time here. You have an electrical connection here, so don't forget to put that back on. And these are like 8mm bolts. There's 3, if not 4. There's a couple on the back, I believe. 8mm. Don't forget this connection. I believe that's some kind of a rectifier. So I labeled my wires and just temporarily pulled them out of the way for now. Since I'm doing the other side, they'll have to come off again when I get to the other side and start working on this side. But 1, 2, 3, and that just happens to correspond with the cylinders. So let's see if I can get this other 3 off and out of the way. And I just put some blue tape around them. Now this connector here is good size, little tip. Take that off before you take the screws out, because once you take the screws out, you don't have any leverage. Now this clip's pretty hefty, and I have to get up under here to lift the clip and a little WD-40 there to slide that out. So there's also what they call a weather pack in here. It's an orange gasket, and I pulled it out and got it over here to the front of the car and dropped it. So I've got to find that, and that's to keep water out of there, but I'll work on that. All right, so I'm going to take that last bolt out, and then we'll lift that up. All right, let's get a See if I can lift this out. There's the coil pack. I'm going to gently lift it up. Pops right out. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Then that helps me gain access to each of the bolts for this upper intake. I'm going to have to pop that out also, a little Christmas tree here. But I'm going to clean this off a little bit, and I'm going to label them. Oh, what do you know? Already labeled. It's hard to see, but once you get this out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 5. It's already labeled. Huh. How convenient. All right, getting close to being able to take the upper intake manifold off. I'm going to go ahead and pull the spark plug wires off of the spark plugs, and I replaced these about a year ago, and label those. And then I'm going to pull them through the intake, since it goes between the intake and the valve cover gaskets, to get things out of the way. Or, you know, on second thought, maybe I'll just leave it as it is and pull everything up together at the same time. Let's just rethink that for a minute. I might be able to swing it. I've just got to get it under that one right down here. If not, I've got to get it under this wire here. Oops. Get under this wire here. No, I might be able to swing it. I'll just tie that out of the way, and we'll give it a shot. All right, let me get to the bolts. I elected to go ahead and pull the spark plug wires. It's going to be much easier. Let's get this up a little. There we go. And there are 6 bolts to get to. Now, if I can get this just right. So there's going to be one in the back, way over here. You can see the top of my finger, maybe some light. There's one there. 1, 2 there. 1, 2 there. And then there's one way over here. And it has a little bracket on it for the fuel rail. Yeah, that's probably fuel. Now, right here in this little corner here, when I pull the wires, there's this little bracket here that kind of keeps things spread apart. So let's see if I can't get these bolts undone and get this intake taken off. One other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my compressor and compressed air and blow this out one more time. I need to put something inside the throttle body and over here by the MAF filter and the air box. But I'm going to blow that stuff off one more time because I don't want to get anything inside. And those were 13mm bolts. Well, let's see if I can get this off. I may have to call it, well, I am going to have to call it again because I got thunder boomers coming in. So I gently lift up. I'll have to get that Christmas tree over here once I lift it up. There's a little white tab. You may not see it behind the engine oil, but where this connector is. Well, let's see if I can lift it straight up off of the bolts, the studs. All right. Let's see. Make sure nothing's connected on this side. Not see anything. And I think we're off. Oh, there's another Christmas tree on this side, so I'm going to have to remove it. You can't see it, it's on the other side. If you look right here, there's that little Christmas tree I was talking about, and it didn't have any tabs on the back. It pulls straight out, so I used a removal tool, you know, one of these devices, or trim panel removal tool, and just popped it up. And then there was one on the back side here too. Let me show you that. I'm not sure if I showed you this or not. Move it over and I'll show you. There was one right there. I'm pointing the light. Trying to point the light. Nope, that's not working. Right. Well, that's good. Right there where the light is. Right in there. Tip of my finger. See the white? It pushes that way. Now, there's also, as I get ready to remove this, one more hose that you have to remove right down in here. Right there. So as I lift this up, I've got to remove that hose there. Alright, see if you can see that. Straight up, right off the studs, and then turn it over. And you will see the hose that I need to remove. Right. And balance the light. And you see my finger right up under there. There is no clamp. And she pops right off. And then take her out. Alright, now I can also see that there are going to be at least one, if not two connectors I need to remove. There's going to be this connector here that I need to remove so I can get this harness up and out of the way. Way up the top here is going to be another connector, and I don't know, third one over here there is a connector. Yeah, I believe all three of these connectors, there's one there, all three of those connectors are going to have to be removed. Let's see if I get a better shot. Wow, branch just fell. Okay. So I'll have to disconnect those. Let's see, is there anything else? Again, I think I'll have to remove the compressor, which means I have to take the serpentine belt off. It's going to be a tight squeeze. Maybe yes, maybe no. No, I'm pretty convinced it's going to have to be removed. Let's see if we can get up close and personal. Now, I had to use a pick. These are the fuel injector connectors, and there's a tab on either side. If you look right here, you're going to see a white piece of plastic right there, a bit of a knob, and you're going to have to pull back slightly and slide it up. There's one on the other side too, so be very, very careful. This is brittle plastic. I did hit that with some silicone, so I had to peel that back a little bit and then gently pull it up on both sides. See it right now, it's up on this side but not the other side. Let's see if I can, really hard to show you, but it's way down in there. Get the light in there. I had to very gently try and do this and not get your hand in the way. There you go, see? Just peel it up just a little bit, just enough to get it clear, and oh, there goes the light. Problem when you got a magnetic light, there's not a lot of stuff for the magnet to stick to. I need to get one of those engine bay lights. Very gently. I'll come back to the other side. Okay. And get right down in there. See, right here. And gently peel up on it. And it slips up. There we go. So now I've got to do the other two. Alright, so here was the problem. You see how this fuel injector is turned that way, facing that way? Well, that meant that the clip is on the far side and then the clip on this side. And you can see, actually with age, I broke, let's see if we can reach that, broke the clip right there. I broke that clip. I may tie wrap it on, or I may just cut into the loom and put another one on. But you can see the difficulty. It's on the opposite side there. Right there. That was a bear. Had to use a small pick to get to that. Again, it's got some age on it. Oh, gosh, if I get it in frame. It's got some age on it. Again, see right there on the back. See if I can get that in the light. I'm struggling with this humidity here. Okay. You're right back there. That clip was on the far side. This clip was on the near side, but due to its age, heat, cold, especially heat, I ended up that clip. Okay, right there. This is tough doing this one-handed. Okay, but there is getting this stuff into an area where you can actually see it. Let's get it on top here. There we go. Now you can see. Right there. That was the clip facing, and it was a bear. All right. I guess they put that fuel injector over to the side for a reason, but it made it a bear. Had to do the same one on the back too. Now I'll see if I can grab a bungee cord and pull all this out of the way. I had another hidden clip. It is right here. Here's the compressor. It's right beneath the braided hose here. Now let me get a side shot. Right in there. I'll take my screwdriver and point right there. You can see that. I had to see there's a lip to the left, push down here and move backwards. So I got it undone. Of course, I did a little WD-40, or I used some silicone, and I pushed it down and it will slide back like so. All right, on to the next step. All right, well, they made this fairly easy. The tensioner is down below the alternator, and if you look very carefully, you can see where my 3/8" drive wrench is. You see where that's sitting? There's a little square hole in there, and you put your 3/8" drive in there. And then in order to loosen the belt, you're going to turn it counterclockwise. Let's see if I could show you. See how it loosens up? And I'll take the belt off. Now, if you ever, always write down the routing, but if you forget, there's the indicator. So here's another thing they did. You know, the tensioner is down there. It's fairly easy to get to. I didn't have to take the shroud off. But as belts wear, they stretch. And on top of the actual tensioner, you see the 3 arrows there? That's an indicator of belt stretch. If it gets to a certain point, you replace the belt. Unless, of course, there's something obvious that you see. But that's an indicator. Now, that's a nifty little idea. So let me take the belt off. 3 13mm bolts here and here. I also hit them with a little bit of PB Blaster, or Coil in my case, before I took these out. Been in there a long time. Belt is off. A couple more clips here. There's one here, one side. I pulled it toward me. You see the right there? So it was on in such a manner. This popped it up. Then there's another one over here. And It was like so. And there's a clip right here. Pull that toward me. Pull that off. Pull it off. And let's see what else is in the way here. I think I might be close to being able to get this off. It should jiggle now. I think there's another Christmas tree on the back of this. And here's your refrigerant line. So let's see. Of course, there's always something in the way. There we go. Makes you wonder if there's a post or something under there. Now, I am going to move that out of the way just a tiny bit. Remember, you don't have to discharge anything as far as the air conditioning is concerned. Just kind of move it out of the way. And that should give you a little more room here. There's a wire up under here. You kind of have to get to. So let's see. So I've got it to one side. Let's see what kind of room I have. Oh, that's much better. Let's see if I can. Yeah, now there's a. Got to get this out of the way. Right in here is where it's going to bind. That corner right there. All right, you see that little post right there? That little post sits on top of one of the studs. So now, when I pull that up, that gives me a slightly better access to get in here and move things. Yeah, that's better. Much better. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do some Coil and PB blaster on this because I'm going to call it a day here. And, you know, that's enough. That's enough for today. I think I'll be able to make it. Now, let's take a look. I forgot to take a look at the inside. Let's take a look here. Kind of carboned up.
No, now go away or I shall taunt you a second time.
But for a truck with like, what, I don't know, 129,000 miles. So let me get a look standing on my stool. Look very carefully in there. Oh yeah, that's some carbon in there. That is some carbon. Let's see. Gonna have to run some cleaner through there. That's pretty bad. All right, I'm gonna cover these up so nothing gets in there. And oh, we got to take a look at the gaskets. Well, let's look at the plenum gaskets. All right, so there's 3 of them doubled, so that's 6. They're looking a little flat. Let me peel one out. And they've probably been in there, what, 6 or 8 years? Right after I bought this truck, my father-in-law, easily. That was one of the first things that I had a problem with. The air intake gaskets were old and there was a leak. So let me pull one out. We'll see how flat is. All things considered, still not too bad. Lots of elasticity to it. But if I've gone to this point for like $4 and something each, I'm going to replace these bad boys because I don't want to take it apart again. But, you know, not as bad as I thought they would be. Reasonable. You probably could put it back together, but I'm not going to chance it. Alright, before I give it up for the night, carry it on a little bit longer, there are 8 screws that go along the outside. But right here, on that corner, right there, if you can see my finger, right there, that was a stud, and that's where that one piece of the electrical line snapped on to hold it in place. That little piece right there where my thumb is. And that's a stud. They're all 10 millimeter. Like I say, it was a bear getting those connections off the fuel injectors. I went around, got all of these bolts out. Then I had to crack the case. I mean, it's on there. It's bonded. It's been on there since, well, the truck was manufactured in 98. So, you know, it's a 99. So what I did is I got my little tool. You know those Wonder Bars that you get? I have a mini Wonder Bar. And very carefully worked around to where I found a lip. Because you don't want to scratch anything, you don't want to gouge anything, you don't want to break anything. But I was able to find a lip right up in there. And then I worked my way, and just take your time, worked my way up into here, way up in here, and I was able to finally crack it. You just have to work it. Don't try and manhandle it, just take your time. But buddy, it was bonded. You can see where the oil has now poured down here where my finger is. Get around in there. Let's see. Let me get a better lighting situation. I'm losing my light here. I can't keep a flashlight in place. Down here where my finger is, down there on the header, the exhaust manifold, not header, but the exhaust manifold, you can see where the oil started to pour out. And down here, it's beginning to drip down. And that's because I've loosened up everything. I did squirt it off with a little brake clean before I took it off, but you know, you're still going to get a mess and you have to clean it up. So, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow I'll go ahead and pull this first one off. I'm just not in the mood tonight. I'm tired. I'm sweaty. I've done enough for the day. I'm back after several days of respite and thunderstorms. So I have cleaned up, removed the valve cover gasket. I have cleaned everything up. Used some brake clean. You can see I have very clean edges. Now down here at the bottom, you see where my finger is, oil has a tendency to pool. So I soaked that up with a shop cloth. I have a super scraper and was able to scrape, I'll show you that in a second, scrape some residual stuff off. You got to be careful with a super scraper. It is carbide, so you don't want to gouge anything. I will eventually, once I get the valve cover gasket on, I'm going to clean up all this down in here because that's where you see the smoke. But I've cleaned everything up. You want it perfectly clean. Alright, no residual oil. Before I put this on, now I did call Feldpro and they didn't mention this, but I happen to know this. I've seen enough videos and tinkered with enough cars. Wherever the metal has a tendency to mate, and there's two areas. Get the light in there. You see right there, that's where the metal mates. You want to put some, say, Permatex black there, and way over here, if you look right down in there. As a matter of fact, that is uneven. Wherever surfaces like that meet, you need to put some Permatex. As a matter of fact, these are original, and that was there. It came from the factory that way. So I've gotten everything clean. I'm going to make sure all my holes are clean for the screws, and I'm going to show you something about the actual gasket that I discovered. I had to use a little compressed air to blow some oil out of those bolt holes. So the Feldpro gasket is kind of a composite. It's real thin, a bit of a composite with what they call the dry Permatex stuff, I guess. But I had noticed when I had removed the actual valve cover gasket, if you look right there, I'm hoping you see this on camera, it's a bit recessed. Not on the other side, but on this side. Here, and here, and over here, and over here. And I thought about that, so I called them and it said it doesn't matter. But also what I noticed is the diameter of those holes is smaller than these. and I know why. So you're going to have to disregard that little area, because if you flip this to make it match, it's not going to be correct. It's going to be off by a couple of millimeters here and here. So you flip it over. Now remember I said the rubber diameter was a little bit different? That's to hold your bolt in as you reapply this and your bolt doesn't fall out and this doesn't get all cattywampus. Now this was the edge that had the stud, so I'll leave that last. That was a pretty good idea. Everything is clean. You can see a little bit of the RTV right in there. Where my finger is. I can't even see my own finger. I gotta climb up on this stool. There we go, right there. You see it right there. Just a little bleb. A little bit of bleb. Little bitty bleb. Right in here. You can see it. If I can get my finger out of the way. Right there at the end of my finger. Alright, now I'm going to pull everything out of the way and we're going to put this on and tighten it down. So I'm back at it again here. I have put the valve cover on. It does have a sequence and it does have a torque setting, which I will probably take a photo of that and put it at the end of the video. Way back there where that black grommet is, that's where the PCV valve goes. Since I'm there, it's cheap, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. And when I was messing with the screws or the bolts for this valve cover, I violated my own rule, and because I'm on gravel, I did not put any cardboard on the ground. That way, if it hits, you can hear it on the cardboard. If you're in a garage, you can hear it hit the concrete. Well, I lost one, and it did not hit the ground. I did find it wedged up way down in here, and I had to take the mirror to find it, but I did find it. So now I'm going to put as much of this back together as I can. Oh, I went ahead and I had redone the connector for that one fuel injector that was bad. So it was like, I don't know, $8 or $9 off Amazon. A slightly different design. I like it a little bit better. It pushes on and pushes off. Some have a tension clamp or a piece of metal, a wire. Let's see if you can see it on this thing. Here it is, right there. Some have a metal wire that you pull off. This one just snaps on. Now, to make sure that I connected it correctly, I don't know if it matters, but just to make sure I connected it correctly, I did one wire at a time. So I know that when I faced it this way, this was the red wire. I did some marine grade heat shrink. I soldered it. I didn't have any of the butt connectors that have the sealant and shrink tubing on it, so I just did it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to take this piece of loom, put it back over here, and put some electrical tape. Then I'm going to start reconnecting things back on this other side here. Last night I started to remove the alternator, and there were 3 bolts, and I had sprayed some Coil on them. So one here, one there, and one in the back. And I had a problem with the one in the back. I think it was a 12 or 13 millimeter, one of the two. When I got to the one in the back, it was so tight, and I pretty much think it was the galling, that my head right there, you can see, I can get close enough, you can see where the socket actually began to round it off a little bit. And I think it was because the standard style socket flexed too much. So I grabbed my impact socket, 1/2 inch drive, 3/8 inch drive, man, it flexed. So I got my 1/2 inch drive, put that impact socket on there, which is much tougher, and I was able to break that loose. Here are the bolts for the AC compressor. I'm going to go ahead and put these on the wire wheel, clean those up, and add a little fluid film. So when I reattach the AC compressor, maybe for the next guy, maybe for me, it'll be so much easier to get off. I've done a little more reassembly. I went ahead and tightened down the 3 bolts for the AC compressor. Now there is a post. There's no bolt here. There's a post on this far side, so make sure you get on the post. Kind of like doing a head gasket. There are usually some posts. I went ahead and reconnected all 3 of the fuel injectors, and I had to double check my photo. I was trying to figure out where this goes, and it actually snaps on the back side of the air intake plenum. There is a bracket back there that will snap into, and I had to look at the photo because I was trying to figure out what went in the front, what went in the back. I did have it correct. This will lie right underneath the air intake, and this part, the male part, will come up and connect there. And then it has its own bracket to snap to, which I will get to later. Now that bracket down there that you see, that's for the spark plug wires, and I'll put those in last, right at the end of my finger there. I went ahead and did some Scotch 33 tape. This was the insulation for the condensation line on the AC unit there. I have no place to stick this flashlight. Everything is not iron based. I need a place to stick it. So from there, whoops, you can see from there back about 8-10 inches, I wrapped it. I cleaned out the spark plugs with some brake clean. I'm looking at all the hoses. I know that, you know, this particular hose here and this particular hose there and there go to the air intake plenum. So I'm making sure there's nothing left undone. Oh, and then the brake booster is down here. I'll connect that later, but I've got to get a new clamp on this. That one broke. So remember where all your lines are. I'm sure there's a torque setting for these bolts here, but I just did an ugga-dugga, 2 ugga-duggas on my impact. Not too much. And I reconnected the connections here on top for the compressor. Be careful of this. That's easy to break if you're leaning into the engine compartment. Now I'm going to start working over here, and I'm going to go ahead and take the alternator out. So this is the bolt I was telling you about earlier, required a little effort. I'm going to take the upper radiator hose out, since I'm going to go ahead and replace the actual thermostat. And you can see how crappy it looks down there to begin with. Let's see if I can get a better shot there. Hold on just a second. Okay, down in here, you see the rust. I need to get some of that scale and stuff out before I put in a new thermostat. And I'm using a Motorcraft thermostat. They're a little more expensive, but I'm going to go ahead and use that. There's just something about a $7 or $8 thermostat I just don't trust. So I'm going with Motorcraft. I think on Amazon it was $23. All right, so let me get to disconnecting all this, because I now need to get to the right side here. Let's get a good look at this thermostat that I pulled out. It is 192. OEM, I think, is 192, 195. But see all the crusties? I don't remember replacing this thing. It is a Motorad, M-O-T-O-R-A-D. But if I'm there, change it. I've never had a problem. But you can see how crusty it is. All right. Oh, moving on over to the alternator. I found something here. You're gonna have to be very, very careful here. Let's see if I can get a good shot of this up close. There is a clip here. good shot here. There is a clip right here, and you're going to have to take a pick and pull this way very gently. I mean, it's a very tight fit right in there. I sprayed some silicone on there so it'll slide off a lot easier. I did some silicone on here, but it is recessed, both of them, so be wary. Actually, I found a slightly better way. I took the pick and put it inside where my finger is, right to the inside, and lift it up. I found that worked better. So right there where my fat finger is, that little hole right there, I lift it up, pick, small screwdriver, popped it out. This one, I went from the side, and this side, took the small screwdriver, put a little tension on it. Of course, I used silicone, popped it out. Removing the upper radiator hose gave me enough room to get back here to the connector, little 10mm bolt, and I can slide the boot back. Be very careful, don't break the post. Be gentle. Even when you're putting it back on, gently. It just has to be firm. All right, I think I've got it recording now. Here we go. So I now have the alternator out. Frees up a little area. I'm going to go ahead and take the coolant sensor connection off, because they're easy to break. So I'm going to snap that off. I've got to remove this coolant hose here and take this wiring harness up here and move it out of the way. And then pop off a couple of spark plug wires down there. I might be able to fold them back into this area and out of the way to give me enough rooms to get to this. It's going to be a tight fit back there in the back, but I think I can wedge it in. All right, let me get to it. All I had to do was push down and slide it up. But again, be careful of the sensor itself, but I'm always cautious about the connectors. Now I'm going to work on the hose here. I think that goes back, if I'm not mistaken, it goes back to the core. Yeah, I believe it does. Yep, goes back to the core inside the engine, compartment. A small snafu. I went ahead and I chose to remove the coolant temp sensor because the bond on this hose was so tight I couldn't get a tool in there to loosen up that bond. So I removed that. That gave me a better angle. And I mean, I was even using a hose removal plier. These are handy. These are real handy. So finally, I was able to get up under there and break the bond. Let's see if I can get around there one-handed. But it was a bear. I just couldn't get the angle. See, now I've got the bond broken, and then I can start wedging it up little by little. Doing this one-handed as a pistol. There we go. Success. I had to jiggle, jiggle, jiggle left and right, pull up, jiggle, 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 and you can see it's off. Whew. All right, I can tell you what's not going to be pleasant. Let's get into that bolt way back there. Now, that refrigerant line is held on by a clamp there, and then on the back side you can't see it, but just undoing that clamp's not going to be enough because it goes all the way around. You see, it goes all the way around there. Maybe I can get that one on the back side in order to be able to pull this out of the way a little bit more. I don't know. Let's see how difficult it is to take that bolt out. Now, don't forget, down here on this side, that's where the stud is on that side, because there's that little piece that will snap on it. Now, don't forget this. This line right here, if you remember my video on fixing the blend doors in this particular vehicle, all that problem was over here. That's the line. There's the solenoid. There's several lines, so I'm going to pop that apart, and I may go ahead and remove that one just so it's not in the way. We'll see. But this one I've got to disconnect. That's your vacuum line. Well, it wasn't quite as hard as I made it out to be. I'm getting ready to pull this cover off. Ought to be a little easier because I got something to grab onto. But I did make a discovery. I had lost a bolt that on the top of this engine, one of the first things you take off is this protective guard, kind of triangular in shape, to protect the accelerator cable and the cruise control cable. I always wondered where that bolt had gone. And there she is. That had actually stripped out, so I may have to get a slightly larger one. But that's where she ended up. Been there for years. That one popped off much easier than the other. Didn't have to pry, just wiggled a little bit. Now you have to kind of clear this area and clear the transmission fluid dipstick, so it's kind of a this way and this away kind of situation. So oh, I did blow all the dirt off too. I covered all my ports and blew off the dirt with some compressed air, and you can see where the oil is headed to the bottom, and I'm going to soak that up. But a little bit easier than what I had anticipated. I am back to work on this. It's been several days. I've been fighting thunder boomers, typical North Carolina weather in the summertime, hot and humid during the day, and thunder boomers in the evening. Now I have put the valve cover back on this side. That was a lot easier than the other side. Just remember that your post in this case is way over here. You can see my finger there. There you go. That's where that post goes. Everything is buttoned up. I did put a little bit of the Permatex black on those areas that I showed you before where things mate. Oh, I did forget to mention, but I'll go ahead and put it in a comment. I torqued these down to 65 inch pounds. Inch pounds, not foot pounds. And you do it in a particular manner, and I showed you you've got to do inside out. You take things off, outside in. I noticed something. I don't think this has been done before. I think everything was original. I see over here, kind of upside down, okay. I've never seen that from the factory. That's odd. But it doesn't have any other kind of a code like it came from a junkyard. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and start reconnecting things, but I'm not going to put the alternator on yet because I need to get into the ports over here and clean those out as best I can. Now, one way that you can do it is make sure all the valves are closed. Hit it with an awful lot of brake clean or carb cleaner and clean it out. You just don't want that residue getting in the cylinders. But I think what I'm going to do is just, you know, moisten a shop towel with some brake clean and just clean out as much as I can. Otherwise, it's just a bear. And I will probably end up running 2 cans of BG 44K. And that's probably one of the best cleaners around. But you just can't get it at Walmart or any of the auto parts stores. You have to order it special. You can get it off Amazon. It's pricey, but almost every mechanic I've ever talked to or conversed with online, it's the best. So I'll end up getting a couple cans of that. So everything is tightened down, like I said, the way it should be. I'm going to start slowly reconnecting things. I did down here, lots of gunk. This is where the thermostat goes. Lots of gunk right here. Scraped all that out, clean this up. Gonna have a good mating surface, and it's sealed by an O-ring. So let me connect a few things and we'll come back. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I got a new toy. I got one of those bars, light bars for your car that is spring-loaded and will grip the side of the hood. And it's a Nikon, N-E-I-K-O, 1200 lumen, I believe, is the intensity of the high setting. That's the high setting, and here's the low setting. Not much of a difference. It's still pretty good either way. I've been wanting one for a long time. It was about $95 on Amazon. Also has some little magnetic mounts. One reason I wanted this is every time I tried to put my magnetic flashlight, this one or the other one I have, someplace, it didn't want to stick. There's just so much aluminum. But this is kind of nice. It is rechargeable, and it should last me 3 or 4 hours. The charger too, what's real nice is when you plug it into the charger itself has an LED. When it's fully charged, it turns green. All right, enough about the toys. So I put the heater core hose back on, which is down here. I'll put that back on. Found the witness marks, so you put that clamp back in the same spot. Don't forget to reconnect this. That's the, as I said before, it goes to the blend doors. You don't want to forget that, otherwise your AC is not going to work correctly. I'm going to put this back into its appropriate Christmas tree here. It'll go fit in there. Tell you what, I'll work on that after I put the alternator back in. Maybe I have to go underneath it. We'll see. What have I forgotten? Here's the stuff. I moved it over here. The coil wires and stuff are still over here. This is the resistor or whatever it is for that coil pack. Back here on the stud, there's that little cylinder you push down. And have I forgotten anything? I don't think so. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on cleaning these ports out. Alternator's back in. So 1 bolt, 2 bolts, 3 bolts. Don't forget this little bracket. I couldn't find my main lug to the alternator. It was way over here and tucked. And I kept saying, you can't miss it. It's got a rubber boot. And it ended up being way over the other side. So here it is. I tightened that down. Don't manhandle that. That post will snap on you. You'll be buying a new alternator. So I just tightened that. Remember this little grounding wire? No, signal wire. I think that's the signal wire maybe. And snap that in. Snap that in. Put that in its post. What else did I do? Oh, I'm going to do the temperature coolant sensor. I went ahead and bought a new one. That thing's probably original. What the heck for the cost? And I'm right there. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So here's the new temperature coolant sensor. Already has the the sealant on it, and you know, screw it in until it's firm. Again, you don't have to manhandle it, and it goes right in there. So I'll work on that. Give me a second or two. Oh, I'm sure there's some kind of a torque setting. I don't remember what it is, but I just ugga-dugga on my battery-powered impact wrench. And the one I boogered up, it was way over here. I put it up here, so if it has a problem, you have a better better leverage, and to try and remove that if you had to use vice grips or something. I take my mirror and I checked each of the cylinders to make sure I didn't leave anything in there like bits or pieces of shop cloth, and I didn't. Just want to make sure. I got it as clean as I possibly could. So there's nothing in there. I'm going to cover it up with rags again so nothing gets inside. You can see here, I'm going to clean up the bolts. I also cleaned the mating surface. I took my wire wheel to the actual surface there. It's a rubber gasket. Now this is a Motorcraft OEM thermostat, and it is I believe 192 degrees. Oh, let me see. Well, 92G, but I believe it was like 192 to 195. Let's see if it says it over here. 92, 106, somewhere around 192, because I remember checking it. It is Motorcraft. Now, a lot of these have a jiggle pin. Jiggle pin goes to the top. It actually has a little ball bearing there. I don't know if you can hear it on camera. Jiggle pin goes to the top. Now remember, this part goes to the inside of the engine. I've got to put the gasket around it. Thermostat's in. It was a bit of a booger getting these bolts in down here. A lot easier getting them out than it is getting them in. But, you got the one bolt here, and one way up under there. It's hard to see. Now, had I taken this particular idler pulley off, it would have made it much easier, but I was able to get it. And I went ahead and took the hose off that end because I was fighting it twisting. So I just went ahead, and it's just, you know, bare breaking the bond there. But I took it off here, slid it off. I'm going to put that back on. Then the other end, I've got to get some new clamps. And you tighten this down. You know, I think the torque setting's maybe 12 foot-pounds or so. That's about how much you do a spark plug. And you'll feel rubber gasket as it begins to seat. It's an art. Trying to remember where I left off. So before I put the air box back in, I decided to go ahead and clean out the reservoir for the coolant. And let me tell you, it was sludgy. So I just pulled the hose down here. I put this container and drained the majority of it, and then I threw a little bit of distilled water in there to rinse it out. Shot a little compressed air in here because it was sludge. The top layer was great, but look at this. Stuff's been in there about 5 years. Now, that's mixed with a little bit of distilled water, but it was nasty. You'd almost think somebody had a prostate problem. Good Lord. Medical joke. But it was nasty. So now I'm going to go ahead and, you know, put this hose back on. I've got new clamps. This was so hard, and it was at such an angle with the witness marks here to get it back in. I've got to get the special clamps for these things. I do prefer these, but I need to get special clamp. Man, this is tough on fingers and pliers in general. And I'm going to connect the hose back here. I have reconnected it up here by the thermostat. Thermostat's in, tightened up. And then I'm going to put the air box back in here, and there are two grommets. They're in the air box, but grommet here, grommet here, grommet there, grommet there. And what I usually do is I either put some Vaseline or some dielectric grease in there to make it easier to come out the next time. Well, since I had done some work not too long ago, I'm glad I did that. It made it easier to come out. So I'll put all that back together. We're making progress. Do a little scan. I'm going to finish up on this passenger side and work my way over. I'm probably about 80% there. Airbox is on, snapped in. Don't forget to plug in the MAF sensor. Now I have the feeling by the time this is all said and done, when I crank this thing back up, it's probably going to throw some codes because I've had all this stuff disconnected. It's entirely possible. Oh, guess what? The wife was cleaning out the garage, and I've done so many things over so long and not put things away like I should have. She found my Milwaukee tool. I like this to get things apart quickly. One of the best tools that I own. Been missing for about a year. I knew it was in there somewhere, and I have what you call organized chaos. All right, the MAF sensor is good. Be very careful of that. Very expensive if you break one. Let me examine this and see what else I need to plug in on this side. I'll probably have to do, no, I can't do the coil. I did not take the plug wires off on the plugs on this side. Wasn't necessary. I can't do the coil side until I get the coil on, which means I have to get the intake plenum in first. And we're getting to that. Let's get ready and put this plenum on. Now I went ahead and I'm going to replace the gaskets. There. They weren't too bad, but they were slightly flat on the compression side there. When I put the new ones in, they're a little more on the raised side. So for what, $3 or $4 each? Pretty good deal. I took them out, I cleaned all the channels out so there's no debris or grease. Very delicately put those in. Make sure they're flat. And let's go over to the car and let me show you where I have to fit this. So I have to work it in here under this fuel regulator hose and fit it in here and on top of the studs. And that plastic, if you noticed where the bolts go, there are brass inserts. That way you don't crush the plastic. And remember, this has a torque setting, which I will get to in a moment. Got a few more things connected. Now remember, on spark plugs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But on your coil pack, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5. Don't get it confused. Don't forget to attach a little resistor there. I forgot that. Everything's torqued down. All my connections over on this slide are done. This connection goes to the part of the air box, probably the map sensor. Now, don't forget this little bad boy. Remember the orange weather pack? Right here. Remember that little guy right there? Don't forget to put that back in. I put it back into the terminal end, snapped it in. Now I'm going to call it a day and work on it again tomorrow. But everything on this side, everything on this side seems to be buttoned up. I still have to put the belt on, and I also have to go underneath, tighten up the drain for the radiator, and then put the protective panel back underneath. No problem. Then I'll have to fill it with coolant also. Remainder of the air box. I still have to do the cables. I think I'm going to tie wrap. Well, that's okay. Remember, this is the hose that goes to the blend doors, part of that system. And I think it's okay. It's out of the way of the heat. It's not near the exhaust manifold. That's where it was, way over here, and that was a problem. So I've still got to put the air box on this side, but again, don't do that until I put the belt on. I've got the air conditioning compressor tightened down. I still have, well, if I can find a place to put the light, you know, I still have these connections. I'll have to figure out what that went to. Well, let me check on that. I'll get back to you. It took me a second. So one of the connectors, you can't get it mixed up. Throttle body, right there. And then this is the idle air control back here. A little bit closer each day. So, I have reconnected all my hoses. As you can see, let's get this where you can see things there. So here is my brake booster, and it goes to there. Here's the PCV, and here is the vacuum that goes for the AC system, the blend doors, and the like. Got that all connected. I got the idle air control connected. I've got to fix my little rubber vent. I bent that. The main connection is back together. All the spark plugs are done. Oh, I had rats. Sorry about that. So I had this one hose down here. I was trying to figure out what that was. And it routes through there. And that goes to your underside of the throttle body. Let's see if I can get the light on it. Right down in there. If you can see with the end of my finger, that is the underside of the throttle body. Connected to the throttle body. I have double checked all my connections to make sure everything is connected, everything's tightened. I put the belt back on. If you ever wonder what the correct routing or routing is, it's right there. Thermostat's in, that's all tightened up. I got my cable back on. I still have to put the rest of the air body from here to here, and there's one electrical connector, and that goes to the MAP sensor. That's there. I'll tighten that down. I put my cables back on, my accelerator, which is on the bottom, and on the top is the cruise control. But you remember at the beginning of the video, up here, there's that little clip that holds this cable in place. It's an adjustment clip, so you can do this. And I knew I put it in my cart, and I looked for it last night, and I looked for it last night, and I looked for it last night. You remember what I had with that little weather pack, that orange Coil gasket? Whoops, there goes one of my flashlights. Remember that up there? Well, I looked for it and looked for it and looked for it, and I had to walk away. Where did I put it? I remember I put it in my cart. Well, let me show you. So I came back here to the cart and started looking. I'd already taken some of the tools out to go ahead and put them away. And I knew it had to be in here. I know this thing didn't fall over and I didn't lose it, but I checked the gravel with my flashlight, couldn't find it. So, again, walk away. About midnight last night, it struck me. I came downstairs. I have some telescoping wands that have magnets on the end. I thought, well, maybe it had gotten stuck on one of those, and I had put those away. I checked, I was wrong. And I said, something just ain't right. So I came back over here. This is my magnetic tray for nuts and bolts. And I looked, and it's not there. Well, if you look, there's a piece, a remnant of the old clamp, one of those hose clamps. Do you see it? Let's turn it that way. There it is. It's camouflaged. So I found it. Well, I believe I have the last of it. This hose, had to look for it. I put it way down here. So that runs from the oil filler neck. And there's my map connection way back there. Get it in frame. I tighten these up. Now eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some carb cleaner into the throttle body. I'll take this back off. I'm going to run carb cleaner through there while somebody's accelerating, you know, high idle, to clean that out. And that way it'll choke out a little bit. But if you have somebody pushing on the gas pedal and increasing the RPM, it'll clean it out, and that way I don't have to take it apart and clean it. So that comes later. I got to get the coolant in it, but I am waiting on the delivery truck from Walmart. Difference in price. I had it shipped to the house, and it's supposed to be here by 10 o'clock tonight, and it's, you know, close to 7 now. It was $9.86 a quart. I'm using the standard Prestone for all cars. If you get the same thing at some of the auto parts store, instead of $9.86, it's $16. Even with the discounts and this, that, and the other, I'm still saving money. It just hasn't arrived. And again, I'm going to tap that out, put a larger screw in. This one's threaded. This one was threaded, but that screw was lost a long time ago. So I'll just do that. That's just extra work. I think I've done this a dozen times. I'm tired and I can't talk. So, you know, I'm getting ready to put the shield back on. There was only the one bolt. This one back here was reamed out. Well, this was a 1/4 by 20, but the bolt that was in there was not a 1/4 by 20. It was some other kind of screw, and it reamed out the threads. So I took my thread chaser, 1/4 by 20, went back here. This was originally a 1/4 by 20, but I had to tap that again to a 5/16-18, 5/16 by 18. So if you know about taps and dies, you have to drill the hole a certain size. This was a 17/64. Well, I had the extra bolts, but they were too long. And I said, well, I have to go to the box store and get some. No, no, no. Make your own set screw, so to speak. So here's the bolt, and there's the nut. So that way, I could keep the bolt higher up, because it's not hitting anything, and tighten it there. Don't have to go get extra bolts. Use what you have, see? So that was nice. I filled it up with coolant. This is where I ran into a problem. Remember, I had put in a new sensor here. It's a one-wire system. You see by my thumb there. It is a one-wire system because the case itself is the ground. Put the coolant in, bled the system, and the gauge didn't work inside the cluster. And I'm going, I didn't do anything there to alter that. I thought perhaps it was just a ground situation. So I had my daughter sit in the truck and look at the instrument cluster, and I took a wire from the brass part of the sensor and ground it to the case. Now technically the sealant shouldn't make a difference, but I said, let's just see. Well, guess what? It didn't make a difference. This thing didn't work. And I'm not a parts cannon guy, but that's the only thing I come up with is I had a bad sensor, a brand new bad sensor. Always my luck that I get one. Now it's a 19mm and you gotta have a deep socket, but I can tell you it's tough to get it past this particular hose right here. So I had to take the snorkel off again and use a 19mm wrench to get in here and tighten this up. Don't over tighten. That's aluminum, you'll crack it. Over here, the idle air control has a little vent cap on it, and apparently I left it turned upside down and it kind of bent it this way. It'll still work, but if you try and bend it back, you'll break it, and that's like a $42 part. Hey, it works. I don't care. I'm going to slide it back on there, and we're fine. I have double checked, triple checked. I've run the engine. I've bled it. I've looked for any leaks. I don't have any leaks. So I'm going to say another job well done. So let's do another quick scan. So that you can see where everything is. Now I learned to do this because sometimes you have to go back and refer. And you go, man, exactly where did that wire run? Or where did that tubing go? This way you can take your video, you can stop it. I did add some coolant here. I've got to figure out what the high level is. And she fired up the first time, so I know that I got all my cylinders and my coil pack where it should be. All the cables are reconnected, all electrical connectors. No leaks, no drips, no runs. And I think I'm done. And again, the only code I got was for the bad temp sensor. The MAF and MAP sensors, no code. So once again, I'll leave you with my mantra. I'll fix your car, but it won't go far. You know, I marked everything. I made sure all my connectors were connected, so forth and so on. But when I tried to start the car, I had a problem with it running fairly rough. And I could smell how rich it was in the back. Not really smoke, but you could just smell the richness. And then I tried to turn on the AC. Well, the clutch wouldn't engage. Here's your clutch. And I went, I didn't really touch that. And I went back and I said, check all your connections. I did. I made sure all my grounds are grounds, powers to powers. I have gone through this system from head to toe. I made sure that I didn't have a bad relay. I made sure that my connectors were connected, that one large connector there. I had not touched the PCM. I could bypass the system and I could make the clutch work. and it would actually cool down. So that told me I didn't have a pressure switch or a ground or a pressure issue with, say, not enough gas in the system or maybe too much pressure, because that worked fine. It was the control side. And that's where I started doing all of my investigation. And I had to have a little help on this. The wiring diagrams are not always correct. I've learned that from watching enough YouTube videos from the mechanics. Those diagrams aren't always correct. So I had a little help from a couple of folks on justanswer.com. And I was tracing wires all the way to the PCM. Long and detailed process. I've worked on this a little bit each day. So again, it was a control side issue. Oh, I even went inside the engine compartment and pulled the control to make sure I had power there at the switch and power going out to the PCM over here. Still didn't work. And then it kind of struck me. I had this happen on my 97 Camry. The engine coolant temperature sensor. Now there's a sensor and there's a sender. The sensor is a two-wire system on this truck, and what it does is it sends data back to the PCM and PCM to the sensor. It's kind of like what used to be a carburetor. On my 97 Camry, it went bad twice. It ran rich, and it did not function well at all until I changed that. Now, I did make the mistake. I didn't remember my own rule. So here is the sender. Notice a one wire. That goes to the instrument cluster to tell you what the temperature is going to be. The actual sensor itself, not the sender, is way under here. So I'm going to have to pull the shrouds and stuff again. Now, of course, it was working just fine. I put everything back together. That's when it breaks. Well, like a dummy, I said, well, since I'm here, I'll replace that, which I did. But that's the actual sensor. I need to get the sender unit. Because I was dismantling everything, that was preventive maintenance. So I'm going to pull these covers. I'm going to have to pull the tube again, and we will replace that particular sensor. Now, how do I know it's bad? I'm not going to do the parts scanning. Well, I put in my scanner. Went to the live data, and there's the money shot. See where it says ECT, forget that, there we go, ECT, and it says minus 40 degrees. That ain't right. That tells me that resistor is bad. And as I also learned, that data or false data that's going to the PCM also affects the control side of this AC system. So I was chasing a rabbit down a rabbit hole. I should have looked at this first. I'm in North Carolina. It is not minus 40 degrees here. It's probably 65 today. So theoretically, that's a bad sensor, and I'm going to go and replace it. I removed the shield, and guess what? Operator malfunction. So here's your throttle body. If you look down here, there's the connector. I didn't reconnect it. I missed one. And again, the money shot. Plugged it in, and what do I get? 63 degrees. Oh, okay. That was a bit difficult getting this thing snapped on. Now I can see why I missed it, because when I removed it, I'd already removed the AC compressor. I left the throttle body on, and I was able to get the plenum off. And so what I did is I took a pair of angled needle nose, got down in there, snapped it on very delicately. Now, technically, this should energize my clutch if I go inside and energize it from inside. I got to put the key in, got to have it run. Are we ready for the money shot? I had to make sure everything is reconnected. I had to make sure the PCM connection was screwed in so that the engine would start. And let's see, the relay is placed back in the fuse box. The connection that I forgot to connect is back in. I've sealed everything up here in the other end so I don't get a vacuum leak or a major leak, kind of a diagnostic trouble code. Intake air temperature over here on this side is back in. MAF sensors in. So let's see, will I or will I not get the compressor? So it's in the process of cycling. It's not doing a rapid cycling, which might indicate a bad pressure switch. And it is cooling inside the cabin. Give it another second or two. That's about normal for its cycling. Rapid cycling will be on, off, on, off, on, off. It'll be very, very quick. So I think we have a winner. Now, in order to remember where all the spark plugs, went, good gosh, so that I don't remember.
Las paragus!